Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It's the 30th of September 2025, and two topics of conversation that seem to be hitting mainstream at the moment. I just wanted to quickly touch on. Actually, there are three things I'm going to sort of mention here, but just bear with me as I want to kind of get through this as quickly as possible for those of you that might not be interested in all of it. Right, I'm just going to throw up some images and we're going to look at a map, and I'm just going to sort of I'll interact with you guys on the map more so than these pictures. Right, let's start with this one. Charlie Kirk. No disrespect to Charlie and his family and friends, but certainly for those of us living outside of the US, many people here may not have even heard of this guy. I said in a video just after the assassination that the whole scenario and the set of circumstances resembled the bullshit assassination attempt on Trump, July of last year, I think, around about the 12th or the 13th. So it was last summer, for any of you that remember. A lone soldier on the rooftop. He obviously groomed as a sacrificial lamb online by the Secret Service, gullible enough to be seen on a shooting range some months before and purchasing firearms, etc. online, just to further support his reasons for being on the rooftop in the first place. No security or Secret sort of Service drones up in the air before Trump's Republican Party pre-election speech, which I think, where was that? It was in Pennsylvania. Even when the Secret Service for Trump or Trump's detail had increased Trump's sort of security detail following intel, indicating around about the same time, if I remember rightly, I think it was Iran. There was talk of Iran also plotting to assassinate Trump summer of last year. I wouldn't have expected the FBI to have thrown a drone up in the air, but the Secret Service would have, as a matter of protocol. The shooter was only about 154 feet away from Trump when the shots were fired. And my guess is the rooftop shooter, he probably wouldn't have even had real rounds or bullets in the magazine of his semi-automatic rifle. And someone else took the shot, not at Trump, but instead taking out a member of the public that was sat in the crowd behind Trump. So I don't know if you remember, if I remember the pictures and the video footage, I think it was top left behind Trump. Somebody sat in the corner with his wife, got taken out. There is no way did that rooftop sort of shooter take, I don't believe, guys, it's again speculation. I don't believe that he took the shot and just clipped Trump's ear. I'm just not buying that for any minute. And you're probably asking why would they want to do that? So the powers to be needed to ensure that Trump won the election. So Kamala Harris would not have been the best person to make some of these difficult decisions currently being made this year and the back end of last year. So things like attacks on Iran, global trade wars off of the back of extortionate tariffs, the planning of World War III. Trump, with his arrogance and I don't give a shit attitude, is probably the better person out of the two to be making, I'm not going to say right decisions, the decisions for the overall sort of intended objectives. So Kamala Harris was popular across the US, and polls actually during that time with the run up to the election suggested that they were both neck and neck in terms of numbers. So Trump's popularity had to be boosted, and what better way to do it than an attempted sort of assassination? So Kamala Harris received 75 million votes on the election or during the election, and Trump received 77.3 million. So that's a difference of only 2.3 million people or votes. And that bullshit assassination attempt, in my view, would have swayed those numbers. A concern here, not necessarily for me and you, but all of those in the US being taken for a bunch of complete mugs. The Trump pantomime was exactly that, and to be insulting people's intelligence is just embarrassing for the American people. But let's move on. What is more concerning for me is that Charlie Kirk, that assassination, that was a successful assassination. If you haven't seen it yet, there is footage springing up online at the moment, showing a very different picture to what actually went on during the incident, with or without a so-called shooter on yet another rooftop on yet another building. Charlie Kirk's fate was already sealed, with or without that shooter. The evidence out there now shows that Charlie's lapel mic. Let me just explain what that is. You see on this guy's t-shirt here, just over his right shoulder, that's like a kind of magnet type of thing. So underneath his shirt there will be what they call a lapel mic. And that will be sort of kept attached to his t-shirt with something like a magnet. So it's like a magnet sort of clip, which keeps it in place. You can kind of see the lapel mic sort of there. The mics are worn certainly when people are publicly speaking or out on stage, in sort of large conferences or small conferences. It doesn't matter about the size of the gathering, and even on podcasts. So any of you that are watching podcasts, the little lapel mic, both hosts and or guests are seen wearing, so everybody can hear what they're saying. However, what Charlie didn't know was the lapel mic being attached to the inside of his shirt was the very thing that was going to be killing him. There's also evidence coming out now where video footage experts and sort of analysts have cross-referenced CCTV footage from different locations across the whole of the campus where this speech was being held, including footage of the shooter running across the roof. So they've got the shooter running across the roof after being laid down in a prone position. So a prone position, guys, is if you're down on your belly. It's basically you're laying down on your belly and you've got your face fixed to a scope on top of a rifle, and looking down range at a target. That's the prone position, laying down. So so the shooter was running across the roof after being laid down in the prone position. So he would have been laid down in the prone position, looking down the scope, and then he got up and started running. So after footage from different locations across the campus, including the footage showing him on the roof, that guy that guy got up and started running, and then 3 seconds later, you hear the shot go off. So whilst the shooter is running across the roof, Charlie is then shot. So the so-called shooter, let's call him Secret Service instead. That's what I'm going to call him. He couldn't have shot. He couldn't, or that guy couldn't have shot Charlie. Guys, before I go on, we always have to consider this. Certainly in today's climate, certainly over the last year or so, but we've got to consider AI and other enhancing software features that may be used to, I don't know, adjust and modify still photos and video footage. So although this footage looks authentic, we always have to reserve judgment. So I'm just going to show you some clips of kind of what I'm sort of seeing and what everybody else is seeing. You're going to know my take on this, guys, and that is that the US government are responsible for taking out Charlie Kirk for whatever reason, maybe to cause yet another divide between the left and right in the US. Who knows? I'm just going to go along the lines of, right, so this is where he sat. He's sat there. He's got 3,000 people in front of him, and he's answering questions to an individual in front of him. I'm just going to show you, what I want you to do is just focus on his T-shirt, and certainly around this area where this lapel mic is supposed to be. Okay, seconds later or split second later, what I want to point out here is the T-shirt. The T-shirt seems to be kind of filling up with air or blowing out away from his chest. Obviously, something's happening. You can see on his face. And then a split second later, this. So look at what's happening with his T-shirt. So the lapel mic has kind of moved down. You can see it's like something is shooting out of, or the actual lapel mic is exploding and shooting something into Charlie's neck, into and through his neck. It's actually that when you get like a blowback from a handgun, a semi-automatic rifle, a sniper rifle, or even a projectile coming out of a rocket launcher, you get a blowback, some kind of any kind of explosion, even grenade. You're going to get a blowback, and that I think is what's happening here inside his T-shirt. This is under his T-shirt. This is happening. I'm not going to show you any more footage because It'd be wrong to do that, and it's too graphic. But I just wanted to point that out because there's loads of videos out there at the moment. And again, this is why, guys, I kind of try and hold back and let the dust settle and see what everyone else is saying, and then just wait for the evidence to really surface, the real evidence, so we can look at things logically. There's lots of videos out there that have gained traction where they've had, 500,000 views and, 250,000 likes and all the rest of it, suggesting that shots have come in from his right side through his neck. Shots have come in from behind him and through the back of his neck and through the front of the t-shirt, even on his left-hand side. But we're talking about a shooter that was in front of him. There were no exit wounds at all that you can see visibly here, either from his right-hand side, from the front, or even the back. It's under his shirt, guys. So I just wanted to point that out. And the reason why I want to point out, I'll come to that in a minute. I'm going to go along the lines that the very security detail that were assigned to Charlie on the day, that were there to protect him, were in fact the assassins. Who are they and why? Those are the two questions millions of people around the world are going to be asking right now. And again, we can only speculate because guess what? I certainly don't work for, the corrupt governments out there, any intelligence services or agencies, and I'm no longer in the military. And I've said for the longest time now that the US are experts of deception, misinformation, and misperception. They can create a situation orchestrated by professionals in the field to make something appear to be true when in fact it couldn't be any further away from the truth. But they create the stage, better known as the theatre, certainly in war and conflict. There are actors playing, the bullshit narrative for an overall sort of objective. So that could be locally at this event on the campus as the theatre, a theatre of conflict to a degree. Or it could be out there across Europe, in the theatre of war, preparing for World War III. But let's not go down that route. And guys, it's not just the US that are at it. All governments are at it. It's just that the Americans are best at it. You've got Mossad, CIA, FSB, MI5, MI6, BND, and the list goes on of the secret services around the world. But they are experts in the field of deception because deception is actually a strategy of war. And it's these events that seem to clarify and confirm to me other events that have happened in the past. And that these are the events that just don't add up and never have really added up in terms of the narrative that's been kind of put out there. So two of them, I'll just mention them quickly. You're going to be aware of these. The Twin Towers in New York and the death of Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed, who both, died in a car crash in France back in 1996, 1997. No, 1997. And again, some of you might be saying, but why kill off Princess Di and Dodi? For me, the answer to that question is simple. Charles and Di were on the verge of splitting up. They had two young sons, and Dodi had proposed to Diana. There was no way in a million years was the royal family of the United Kingdom going to allow a Muslim man become William's and Harry's stepdad. So they both had to be taken out, and that's it. That might sound anyway, that might sound completely out there, but that's it for me. I have, and I was sort of tracking that event when it was happening, and there was two pieces of evidence that really kind of shone out for me. I'm not going to talk about it on this video. It's something that happened a long time ago, but those two pieces of evidence, certainly with a little bit of a military background, kind of sealed it for me. But I'm going to move on quickly. And then there was the Twin Towers. We're not going to go into that. There's plenty of content out there covering the event, conspiracies and speculation. So sorry to have even sort of mentioned this, but I just wanted to, because we have to understand what our governments are up to, and more importantly, what they're capable of. It's all in the best interest of business. As I've been saying, if you've watched any of my previous videos, the countries are a business. We're a commodity, as in humans, the people, and the governments are there to manage it. And it's their job to make sure that that country, that business, whatever you want to call it, doesn't collapse. Okay, that was just that. I'm going to get rid of this. And I just want to show that, sort of show you something on there in a minute. Right. Second, I'm going to be very quick with this because this second piece of information will only it's only going to take me a minute simply, and because I've got nowhere near enough information to clarify anything that I'm about to say. So this is purely speculation, guys, and I'm happy to sit here and admit that because it's the same for pretty much everybody else out there that's talking about this subject. How many of you out there believe that there is life on other planets across space? I'd hope to think, with my logic mind, that 99% of people, as in the world's population, would believe that there's life on other planets out there. Unless, of course, you're one of these idiots that believes that the Earth is flat. But moving on quickly, guess what? Out of the world's population, apparently the 61% believe that some form of life exists on other planets. 47% believe in intelligent alien civilizations out there, while 26% don't. 22% are uncertain, so they're kind of sat on the fence, not really sure which way. And then 17% do not believe in extraterrestrial life whatsoever. And why am I talking about this? So the reason, or the only reason actually, is because if I don't know if you've heard of this, it's 3I-Atlas. It's a comet stroke object that's been labeled that tag, so 3I-Atlas. It's an object hurtling its way through space at 130,000 miles per hour towards the closest planet to us, or in our solar system, and that's going to be Mars. So that seems to be the target. There's plenty of content out there online at the moment talking about it and obviously speculating. I just wanted to put two things into perspective for you. There is there is a method to the madness. This is going to be about 60 seconds. There are 8.1 billion people living on planet Earth, and they, as in we, as in humans, believe that Homo sapiens evolved in Africa around about 200 to 300,000 years ago. However, the earliest ancestors that walked upright, hominins, I think they were called, appeared around 5 or 6 million years ago. Of course, all of that is true if, in fact, you believe in evolution. That's a long time to get to know the very place that we live in, guys, as in humans getting to know this Earth. However, did you know that we, yep, us humans that have been around for so long, apparently have managed to scan with radar, so that's high resolution radar, only 26% of the world's underwater terrain. So that's the seabed. But listen to this, guys. Let's just be generous and say I'm just going to pull out a number between the 300,000 and 6 million. Just 1 million years ago, we were running around, let's say. Did you know that only 0.001% of the deep seafloor has been visually observed? So that is observed with the naked eye, sort of naked eye of that's putting aside the high resolution radar scanning. So 0.001% of the seabed or the deep seafloor has been observed with a naked eye. So let's say, for instance, a submarine going down to the bottom of the ocean and us physically looking. Okay, that's a lot less than just 1%. So 71% of Earth's surface is covered in water, and we have only seen with our own eyes 0.001% of it. Yet we've been living here for God knows how long. So when there are people out there speculating on life outside of this planet, it all has to be taken with a pinch of salt, guys, especially when science comes into the equation. We're in no position to judge what's happening above our heads if we know nothing about the very planet that we live on. But the reason for me mentioning this is because it coincides with another piece of news kind of hitting it's going to be hitting your screens if you're out there on social media, certainly this week. Well, actually today. So you'll hear about the up to 800 US military generals that are gathering at a location in the United States. They're all meeting up to have this a top secret meeting. So the subject matter and the content of the meeting might be confidential, but the meeting itself isn't exactly top secret, because we all know about it. We all know what, where, and who's attending. We just don't know what's being discussed. So it's not really a top secret meeting. But what I'm just going to finish with this. But what if, just think about this for a second. What if they're all having a meeting because of 3I-Atlas actually isn't a comet? There's a lot of talk out there, speculation that this comet has got intelligence in intelligent form. It's slightly changing direction and moving closer to one location, and it's got certain lights emitting and energies emitting, omitting off of it. It's very unusual, and there just seems to be something there that is. It's not natural as such. It's got an intelligent. It's got an intelligent profile. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to leave you with that. What I'm trying to say is, if that it has an intelligent form, and it isn't a comet, maybe that's why your generals are all having an emergency meeting. But let's move on. Finally, a piece of information that's a little more down to earth, and that is the UK digital ID cards. And I can hear you all now. What the fuck? Yep, my thoughts exactly. But again, let's not get sucked into that yet. Another bit of news orchestrated to possibly deflect everyone from what's really going on. Remember, guys, your government, with their sort of sidekicks, that being the mainstream sort of media, are orchestrating the narratives. You'll all know by now that the purpose of this channel is to provide you with some prepping content. And yes, I know I'm lacking that at the moment, but I promise you, guys, I'm currently working on a series of videos at the moment. There's going to be some on a bit of military fitness, different sort of fitness regimes that you can kind of go down. There's some content on infantry awareness. So I've got some content that will be running through. Well, I'll be out in the field and I'm going to run through my kit, the kit, some of the kit that I've got, some survival skills and some other bushcrafty kind of tasks, as well as some exercises, which will be, let's say, entertaining. One of the exercises that I'm kind of planning at the moment is an escape and evasion, but the hunter group, or the group that's there to sort of track you down, they might be wearing a uniform of some sort, like a law enforcement, basically old Bill. It could be. I'm not going to say any more about that, but if that goes according to plan, that will be an entertaining video. Where was I? Digital ID cards. I'm probably going to be echoing probably a lot of what most of you are saying at the moment. You know, I work along the lines of logic, and there is no logic being suggested here by the government when they talk about these ID cards stopping the boats coming in. Nope. The immigrants are actually, they're coming here to get a British passport. So if they're going to get a free, because remember, guys, Starmer is saying that these cards will be free to start. All immigrants will now receive a free ID card as well. In fact, the number of boats will probably increase and not actually deter anybody. These ID cards, guys, are not for the immigrants, ladies and gents. They are for us. And why? Well, let's go back to what I've been saying in sort of other recent videos. You and I are just a number. We're just a commodity, and we're here to keep the engine running. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, nor the language that's coming out of your mouth. So long as you're paying into the pot, and that's all that they're interested in at the moment. You're just, you've just got to listen to that prick Starmer. We're all going to need one of these cards to be working in the UK. And the immigration deterrent bullshit just seems to be their reasoning and actual cause and purpose for bringing out these ID cards. Let's just look at the logic quickly. Okay, there's 45.7 million people in the UK with a UK passport, most of which are now digital. So these are they're passports that have got a digital chip in it. You can scan the chip and it's got certain information about you and I on that chip. There are 42 million people in the UK who possess a full UK driving licence. Did you know that 99% of UK citizens, that's 99%, guys, that have got some kind of bank account? 32.5 million UK citizens are working in the UK at the moment. With, I've said previously, I think it's 1.67 million people actively seeking employment and 9.4 million UK citizens economically inactive to work, whatever the fuck that means. Bring that number to about 11 million people between the ages of 16 and 64 who are not working. We're all going to be pigeonholed into categories. If you're working or unemployed, claiming benefits off sick, disabled, maternity leave, or even on holiday, you'll eventually have a status or category. If it's immigrants that need to be tracked in terms of working, then logic tells us that they should be issuing those ID cards to the immigrants, not those that were born here, that have been living here all their lives, and those British citizens who, already have the right to live and work here. There's absolutely no logical reason why those people should have, and those people is going to be you and I, guys, why we should even have a digital ID card, unless, of course, the government wants to know everything about you, where you work, how much you earn, how much tax are you paying or not paid, how much more tax they can tax you based on what you're earning, and all the rest of it. But listen, after speaking to two friends, actually, two friends, they're two friends of mine. I've known them for quite a while. We had a discussion about these ID cards, and they have in the past crossed paths with the law. And they're really concerned about, and when I say the law, I'm talking about police. They are really concerned about the digital ID cards for employment, because this government will also wrap in and centralize other government databases. And what I mean by that is it's going to be optional to start. So there's going to be other databases that I'll mention in a minute that are going to be optional. You can opt in to have those attached to your card. Those databases will become mandatory later on down the line. They just need to get that noose around your neck or that tag around your neck, and then that's it, you're done. But these other centralized databases include disclosure and barring service, better known as a DBS status on your ID cards. HMRC databases for tax burden information. You've got, what else? We've got NHS for access to your medical records data. And that is, one ID card that is a gateway into all of your personal information your government holds on you on those databases. Tax, driving and transport, your benefits, what we've got, immigration and visas. So your visa status, immigration, all the rest of it. That's that's the government's focus or excuse, reason, whatever. Passports. So your passport information will be on your ID card. Pensions and employment. So again, that's what they're talking about, employment. Education, your qualifications, whether you've got them or not. Your medical records and your criminal records. And you know what? This is a card, in my eyes, really for the sheep in society. Those that are sort of purely for the government, those that are in the back of their minds, they know that they're just a number and they have no choice but to conform. They do have a choice. It's just that they choose to not do anything about it. This means that any potential employer will be able to instantly know whether or not you have run into the law or cross paths with the law, that being a criminal record, whether you've had tax problems in the past, or you owe tax, or whether you're earning enough so they can tax you more, whether you've got or had medical issues. So if you've tried to take your own life, that might be there. Again, guys, of course, this information is not going to be readily available to everybody and all the rest of it, but you know exactly where they're going with this. And quite frankly, the list just goes on. With facial recognition, CCTV, starting to be installed in areas across the UK, and there's news. Listen to this, guys. I was reading something yesterday about these trials that are going on in Europe, Sweden in particular, whereby they've been testing human injected microchips, tiny little sort of nano chips that are injected underneath your skin. And you know what's on that chip? You guessed it, your digital ID card information, giving them access to all of your status and historical information on the chip. So they just scan the top of your hand and they know who you are. Or they've got with the facial recognition CCTV in certain places, also scanning the chip. Did you know what I remember watching this shit, 10, 15 years ago on various different films about this. Whether you're watching any kind of spy movies, Secret Service movies, or whatever, all of that was there. It's kind of fiction, to be honest, and this is becoming a fucking reality. But anyway, those that don't conform, or who have stepped out of line in the past, they'll be fucked. So again, categorizing people, just putting them into these pigeon holes, just to better control the masses. Actually, I shouldn't be saying this next piece of information. It is confidential, but it's old. It's oh fuck it. Right, listen, they're causing the divide and ultimately turning people against the establishment. So here goes. Some years ago, I was working for, not for, with a highly skilled telephony engineer who was quite high up within a company that he was working for. When I say telephony, I mean Vodafone, BT, O2, Telefonica, those sort of companies. And he was responsible for writing, coding, and configuring call management sort of system software on servers. Those are the servers that they control your calls into a business. So it gives you a list of options: option one, option two, option this, option that, to go wherever. And they basically just send you down the dead end path into oblivion, where actually humans don't exist. But I was out on a Christmas do in London with this guy, and he told me there are certain companies out there. We're going back over 10 years ago. This was, so this is definitely it was definitely being introduced and rolled out then. It's definitely there now. But there were certain, he was saying to me, there were certain companies out there, companies that run regular, let's say, lotteries and calling text message prize draws, advertising on some well-known TV channels and programs. Those companies have telephony software that can filter out sort of certain, let's say, categories of people from the phone and text records. This means, let's say, for example, today, if my name was, what's the name of that guy? Michael Carroll. Some of you remember him. He was the binman or the refuse collector up north somewhere in the UK. He won 9.7 million on the lottery back in the early 2000s, I think 2002. He was only 19 years old, and he had an extensive sort of criminal record. Who got lucky and he just won a shitload of money. Anyway, since then, new algorithms have sort of been coded into call management systems for high-profile companies that can filter out anyone with such checkered, should we call it checkered background, from possibly winning any jackpots. So, for example, someone sending a text message to ITV's win £80,000 draw in a fucking camper van competition. You know the ones that I'm on about. If you have a criminal record and you're sending your competition text off of your contract phone, then the algorithm can run a quick, let's say, a soft DBS check on your details to determine whether or not you're a criminal. If you are, then your name isn't pulled out of the hat of winners. Anyway, that was a conversation I had a long time ago. If you don't believe that shit goes on, it does. Okay, it does. You need to kind of come to terms with reality, and what's going on is governance. Okay, just the the evidence is in the word there. It's governance. Okay, they need to make sure that hardened criminals aren't winning £10 million and just go off and be a complete nightmares. They need to be able to control that shit. So anyway, let's just move away from that. I just wanted to sort of talk about this next piece just quickly as well. The UK government, guys, have lost control of this country in the eyes of the public. But honestly, this is the narrative they're creating, and why. The only reason I can see, guys, and I'm going to apologize again for going on about this, but for me, this is all happening because of the war. All of this is a distraction. So we're talking about Tommy Robinson. Let's give him some airtime for his march and, cause a divide in the country. Let's ban the flying of British flags off of lampposts and outside houses just to piss off a few more people, ultimately causing a divide. Let's assassinate Charlie Kirk on the public stage, just to cause more more of a divide between the left and right, ultimately stirring up some shit. And let's talk about the digital ID cards that a majority of the UK's population don't want. In fact, the only people that want them is the immigrants because they want a job. If that's going to help them get a job, then that's it. They'll come. They're going to come over in their droves. Again, more bullshit from everyone. Sort of. It's bullshit for everyone to sort of focus on, and just keeping us all away from the real elephant in the room. Okay, and I'm just going to move on to that just to finish off now. I'll be as quickly as I can with this. This is the last bit, guys. I know some of you are not so interested in this. Hopefully you are, because this is the whole reason. That's the whole reason why this channel's here. Not just my channel, guys. There's prepping channels out there. There's a lot more people seem to be waking up to the fact that this shit is going off. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes on this and then we'll finish off. I just want to let's get some interaction on here. I just want to explain something. Another thing that's been in the news, guys, is these drones. Okay, the drones that are now. People aren't interested in these drones in Ukraine because it's not in their country, it's not their neighbouring country, and I'm not saying they're not interested. They're just kind of okay, mate. That's old news for them, really. Once those drones start dropping into European countries, and getting ever closer to some of you guys, depending on whereabouts in the world you live in, then people are they're going to have no choice but to start waking up, because it's happening. It is happening, and mainstream no longer in those countries going to be able to hold back. And what you can't be doing is hiding the fact that there's drones flying above your heads, which you can physically see, and trying to convince the masses that that's not happening. Anyway, guys, the US and the rest of NATO are positioning themselves to take out Russia at the moment. Putin knows this, and he's slowly but surely he's ending up on the back foot slightly. The Russian economy is coming down like a house of cards, and either side is possibly, again, I'll use the word possibly because what do I know? I'm not a military strategist, and I don't work in any of those environments. But there's a possibility that either side's going to have no choice but to at least attempt a decapitation strike on the other, just to stem this from going wild. I don't think that will work, because I think it's just inevitable that this is going. They're not showing any of this on mainstream, certainly in this country, in the UK. But instead, what they're doing is they're fueling the nation with more pointless anger. The government know that the digital ID cards is going to really kick things off again, in the media, conversations in the pubs, and amongst families at home. The government at the moment is losing popularity. If we're talking about Starmer and his circus parade at the moment, and just to make their position within Parliament weaker. But like I've been saying, it's like they're just walking around with their middle finger up at us all, guys, and just saying "fuck you." Yeah, we actually don't give a shit what you lot think anymore. That's kind of it. That's how I see it. I don't know how you lot see it. And there's got to be a really good reason why they're doing that, guys. There's got to be a really good reason why they're doing that, because if your popularity is going down and you're likely to lose power, there has to be something else coming over the horizon to deflect all of this. Okay. Anyway, the only reason we're hearing about all of these Russian drones in Denmark, Sweden, Poland, Estonia, where else, Germany, is because Putin knows that NATO are moving in. I've been tracking the movement of assets moving west to east towards the Russian border, certainly over the 1,322 days or whatever it's been. The Baltic Sea seems to be lively at the moment, better known as what they call now NATO's lake. At the moment, there's NATO assets flooding into the Baltic Sea, because you've got two locations there. I'm going to show you quickly in a minute, and then we'll finish off. There's two locations there that are going to be critical. Actually, I'm just going to bring it up, and then we'll finish. Right, hopefully you can see this, guys. You're going to be familiar with some of these countries. You would have been on holiday to them. You might live in them, and you might have family and friends living there. Obviously, for any of you that don't know, we've got the UK there. left, okay, and then the rest of Europe. If we're talking about Ukraine, it's this country here, quite a large country actually, probably the size of the UK, but just just laid on its side. Now, I just want to point this out because it is news that has been hitting, not mainstream, but it is being talked about. There's a lot of talk about these drones, Russian drones. Okay, there's a couple of things I just want to say about these drones. Those Russian drones that are going into NATO airspace have no munition warheads. That means no explosive warheads on them. So all Russian drones thus far into NATO airspace are intel gatherers. So no attacks. They're saying they're being attacked, but they're not actually being attacked. These drones are going in to collect data. Hence the reason why NATO haven't shot them down yet. It's better to track a drone back to where it originated from, so back to the ship or on land operator, because the operators are the ones that you need to capture, because they'll hold a lot more intel than those drones will. So it just makes sense to not shoot them down and to track them back, because they're intel drones. Okay, you want the intel off of them. What intel are they collecting off of you? Counterintelligence warfare has been going on for years and years and years, and it will continue to. So that's the reason why these drones aren't getting shut down. Because online, guys, everyone's going, yeah, shoot the drones down. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? La, 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 la. People out there have just got no idea. They don't understand the strategies of war. That's not their fault. It's just the way it is. Right, just quickly, and then that's it. We're done. So these drones last week were being seen. I've got a little tool here. I just want to try and use this if I can. Okay, I think there was talk of drones in this area here. Denmark, Copenhagen. Yep. Why? Why? Well, some of you might be asking why. Why are there drones being sort of sighted in this area? Okay, as I said to you just a minute ago, the Baltic Sea is NATO's lake. It's surrounded by 8 NATO countries, bar Russia. Russia is St. Petersburg, so that's Russia's second largest city, to Moscow, is here on the Baltic Sea. And then we've got Kaliningrad, which you're going to hear people talk about, certainly over the next few months, because Kaliningrad is going to be at war. So if you look here, let me just change this again quickly. If you see here, that there is one route or another route into the Baltic Sea. Guys, that's the only exit and entrance into the Baltic Sea. Okay, so putting that aside, what you've also got is Kaliningrad here. Now, I want to talk about this, and I'll tell you for why. Russia have got, I think they're saying 54 naval vessels. That's naval ships, and 1 submarine located and based in Kaliningrad. Over in, I can't bring it up on the map yet. But anyway, so there's 54 naval ships there. Now, the only way they can get in and out of the Baltic Sea, so they're trapped here at the moment, is through Denmark and, or in between Denmark and Sweden, so around the Copenhagen area. So it would make sense for Russia to have drones up in the air to at least collect intel on the exit. If they need to withdraw their navy out of the NATO lake, that's the only way they can go. So it just makes sense that they're going to be collecting intel there. Okay, guys, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I'm looking for logic. I keep telling you guys that I look for logic. Okay, let's look at logic and just look at, don't just go down, well, there's drones flying over Copenhagen and we should be blowing them out the sky, and look at just look at logic, man. Just look at understand the strategies of war, and it just makes things a whole lot easier. Just logic, actually. You don't need to know the strategies of war, just general knowledge. Right, up here, so we've got Sweden, we've got Finland. Another choke point for Russia is going to be, let me see, let's just put that there, and we're going to go with, so Russia's second biggest city, St. Petersburg. Okay, the only way to get into and out of St. Petersburg is via the Gulf of Finland. Okay, so this is another choke point here. Okay, this here is a choke point. Actually, I'm moving my mouse pointer around. This here is a choke point. The Russians navy, as in their whole naval fleet, is operated out of St. Petersburg. The Russian Navy's admiral and operations bases there. Okay, so that is a key target for NATO. That's a key target for NATO. When this goes off, I see targets being taken out in St. Petersburg. Okay, if you can take out the second largest city in Russia, then that's good news. Okay, that's that. So when we look back at this here, this is critical. Now, the other place that drones have been seen, again, yeah, Estonia. Well, of course, because of the reason I've just said. Okay, this is the only route in and out of for any Russian navy. They can't go up here. That's just that they can't go any further. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to say, guys, is that Russia's trapped within the Baltic Sea, and there are two attack vectors. Let's call them vectors because that's what they are for NATO. My guess is, and looking at some non-public data, that NATO are moving assets into various locations around the Baltics. Okay, and my guess is, and again, guess, speculation, whatever you want to call it, NATO have been planning this war with Russia for a minimum of 3.5 years. Some are even saying they've been planning this since 2014, but I don't want to go into that because I wasn't tracking it back then. Let's say at least 3.5 years. Logically, if I'm one of those commanders, I'm going to be looking at that as a target. Yeah, I'm going to be looking at that as a target first and foremost before we even get into that as a target, and then back down here on the Ukraine, or the Russian forces in Ukraine. Okay, those two are key targets for me. Okay, that's it. So that's why you're going to see drone activity, Russian drone activity, as well as NATO drones. Okay, now how do I see this rolling out? Another 2 minutes, guys, and then that's it. We're finished. I know that this is probably not interesting for a lot of you, but it's critical to understand what this means, because it's going to be happening on our doorsteps. This is how I see this panning out. Again, just guessing and speculation. If this was me, okay, and I've been planning this for 3.5 years, NATO, the only way they're going to win this war for Ukraine, before Ukraine join NATO, because they will, is they need to get rid of the Russian forces that have occupied 20% of Ukraine in this area here. Okay, so they need to be pushed back. To win this war, guys, they need to push those Russian troops back to the border, the Russian border, and no more. Okay, we're not saying invade Russia, although that might be a good idea. But it's like, anyway, basically what I'm saying is to win this war, push the Russians out, regain the 19%. Now, who's going to be in the position to do that? Now, if I'm NATO and I'm commanding and we're planning and designing this, I'm going to, let's say, for instance, have Romania and Bulgaria deal with Crimea. They need to take Crimea back. Okay, Crimea was the territory, a Ukrainian territory that was taken in 2014 by the Russian invasion back then. So you've got to take that back. Turkey, a member of NATO, they probably won't want to get too involved, but we could probably call on their navy or naval assets to help the retaking of Crimea. That gets Crimea back. The problem we're going to have is an area called, it's not a problem. I think this is where it's going to kick off, actually. Let's just change the color of this quickly here. So this is where I think it's going to spark. Just in this area here, we got Kaliningrad and we got Belarus, both Russian. Okay, and then in between those, there is what they call the Suwalki Gap. It's like a 67-kilometer link between those two countries, hence the reason why it's critical for NATO to take out Kaliningrad. But whilst that's happening, we've got to expect blowback from Belarus. Okay, so we need at least, let's change this, we need at least Lithuania to be able to deal with them, Polish forces to deal with them, and also Ukrainian forces to deal with them. Because remember, guys, Russia will be coming back at it, or at us, or at them, as they are already here. Okay, so they're going to come in and help Belarus. Yeah, so that's Belarus. That's where that's going to kick off. Remember also, guys, that you're going to have Lithuania going into, let's change the color of that. I don't like that. Let's come out of there. Let's do this. Keep it all consistent. Lithuania are going to have to deal with Kaliningrad, and Poland are going to have to deal with Kaliningrad, and NATO forces from any of the eight, whether it's Finland, Norway, Sweden, whether it's Germany, Poland, they can deal with Kaliningrad. Okay, I don't. That'd be a couple of weeks and that's done. Um, like I said about St. Petersburg, if that is a target for NATO, and if I'm the general, then yes, that's going to be a target. So they're going to have to deal with Finland. I would have Finnish and Estonian troops going into there, so Latvian to deal with that. So again, that's a front there. I would have to make sure that we are keeping an eye on this here and keeping an eye on the Russian sort of navy. Okay. Anyway, so what we need to do then, now, whilst we're dealing with all this, is we need to push back the Russians out of Ukraine. So we could call upon, many different countries to help do that. Okay. We could have any of these countries. Okay. Any of these countries or all of these countries sending troops into these areas. Okay, guys, into these areas just to push them back. And then UK and the US will probably come in and start taking back strategic, or not taking back, taking out strategic sites within Russia itself. Anyway, that's kind of how I would see this going. Now, if we're going to talk about, I don't want to say World War III, let's just talk about a major engagement within Europe. That's kind of how I see it. Where do I see that starting? Well, let's go back to where the news is starting to come out. Okay, all the news up until now has been in Ukraine. Okay, that is eastern Ukraine, where Russia's invaded. We're getting talk about Belarus. There's talk now coming out about Kaliningrad. We haven't heard anything about St. Petersburg, but that's definitely going to be on the radar. But what we're hearing now is drones in Estonia, or over Estonia, Lithuania. We've had them in Latvia as well, definitely Poland over the last couple of weeks. And we're now getting talk about Denmark, Sweden, and places like that. Okay, that's it. I don't want to go on about that anymore. That's how I see this rolling out. Now, if and when that starts rolling out, we need to be mindful, guys, on how that's going to affect us here. Okay, we just need to understand what that means. I'm not saying, the physical attacks, the conventional attacks or whatever, although I believe that's on the cards. But that's a conversation for another time. Guys, all I'm saying is this is rolling out in front of our eyes. It's not on mainstream at the moment. They're not telling you about it. The only time we're going to start seeing that is when they've got no choice, but we can see what's happening. So you're going to have to tell us your side of the story as such. That's enough for me, guys. Prepping content next. I'm getting that out there. Unless there's any major sort of developments in Europe to update you on. If there is, then I'm going to update you. There's the 800 generals in the US. They're going to come together today. We're not going to know what they're talking about, but they're going to be no doubt making some kind of announcement off the back of it. Whether it's aliens coming in on a 3I-Atlas that we all need to be aware of, or whether, get ready for World War III, or I don't know, America going into Venezuela and taking them out, or going into Iran and finishing that unfinished business there, or China and North Korea being anyway. The list goes on, guys. There's too much going on. Get yourselves military fit infantry wear. Just keep your eyes and ears down to the ground, guys. And I'm going to get this prepping content out this week for you, mate. I've got to start getting that out to you because I don't want this being a news channel. Okay, that's it for me, guys.